Hello everyone. Today I'm continuing my weekly top 10 series with my bottom 10 Doctor Who episodes of all time. Now again, like my top 10 episodes last week, I've not ranked every story. These are just 10 stories that I think, I don't hate them as such, but they're just the ones I don't rate very highly. And as it happens, because I've not seen a lot of the classic era, all these episodes are from the modern era, because out of all the classics that I have seen, I don't feel any of them belong in the bottom 10 list, because I've only really seen the greats, the classic episodes. So here are my worst 10 episodes of Doctor Who. I hope you enjoy. Now in 10th place I've put The Rings of Akhaten, and this is a story that I was watching just the other day actually, and I don't exactly hate it. There are things that I like about this story, and I was kind of umming and ahhing about whether I should put it in this list or not. But ultimately, although it does have a good concept, and it does try to be something clever and unique, I just don't think it quite delivers. You know, it's a bit like Clara's Leaf. It has infinite potential, as it were, but it misses the target a little bit, I think. And in my eyes, it has too many flaws for me to view it as a masterpiece. I mean, first of all, the plot is quite boring. The Doctor and Clara go to the Rings of Akhaten, and Mary sings the song. Mary gets taken to the pyramid thing. The Doctor and Clara go there, and then the Doctor just basically ends up talking to the old god in a speech that starts off well, but ends up kind of a little bit cringeworthy when he's going, "Take it all, baby." I don't like that bit at all. It's really weird. And then Clara comes up holding a leaf, talking to Akhaten, and the leaf just kind of disappears and disintegrates. And I know it's because it has sentimental value that it defeats Akhaten, but for me it just feels like a strange ending. You know, how does the sentimental value of the leaf kind of turn into energy that feeds Akhaten? I just think it's not explained very well. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And yeah, while I've tried to like this story, I just think there are too many things that I don't like about it for me to enjoy it properly. In 9th place, I've put The Doctor's Daughter. Now, this is another episode that I don't exactly hate. I did watch it recently, actually, and I enjoyed it more than I did previous times I've watched it. You know, in the past, I didn't think much of the story at all, really. But I don't know. I think the title is a bit misleading to start with, because it's not the Doctor's daughter. It's like a genetic thing from the DNA in his hand, you know. And the story just doesn't really go anywhere. I think the thing with the dates is it's kind of clever. That works well. But the rest of the story, it just doesn't really go anywhere. It feels a bit boring and dull. And it's only when Jenny is killed at the end that things start to get really interesting. And there is a great moment between the Doctor and General Cobb with his gun at the end. But then something else that really gets me is that how at the end Jenny comes back to life. You know, she's been killed, and then it's only when the Doctor's left that she actually comes back to life and goes off on her own adventures. And it seems that was only done to stop her from travelling with the Doctor as a full-time companion. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. There are good things about this story, a bit like The Rings of Akhaten really, but ultimately it's not one of the greats. Now this is another weird one, Nightmare in Silver. It's another story that sometimes I kind of like and sometimes I don't. But, I mean, when I first watched this story, I just thought it was so bizarre, really. I mean, the whole thing with Hedrick's world and the cyber planner and the thing with the two doctors, I found that really confusing at the time. I mean, what was I? I was like 12, I think, and yeah, it was a lot to take in. I mean, I think that's probably one issue with this story, is that it's a one-parter. You know, it could have benefited from being a two-parter, I think. It has this massive task of reinventing the Cybermen and introducing these new Cybermen, and it kind of delivers on that front, I think. I do like the new Cybermen, although the way that they kind of upgrade themselves all the time doesn't do many favours for the plot, which means there's a kind of Deus Ex Machina ending at the end where they blow up that planet. I don't know, really. I think it's just a bit out there, really. You know, Neil Gaiman, I think it's about the Doctor's wife as well. It's not as great as people say it is, because it's just so weird, really. Another thing that I don't like about the story is the kids, Artie and Angie. They're just so annoying, to be honest. There's no real reason for them to be there. So yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say about this one, really, other than it's just really, really weird. The God Complex is another story that lots of people seem to like, but I just find it a bit out there. I don't really get it, and I suppose that's just me, really. That's just the way I am. But the whole thing with the Minotaur and the hotel, that kind of confused me at the time. I mean, I realise now it's like a prison ship for him, but still, why does he look like a Minotaur from Greek mythology? You know, it doesn't really make much sense. And the whole thing where the characters go praise him and do that creepy laughing, That's just really, really weird, I think. I mean, there are good points about this story, like the bit about Amy's faith in the Doctor. That is kind of interesting, but then when he decides to leave Amy and Rory at the end, that's another thing that I don't agree with, that I don't really get. I mean, he's taken them on loads of dangerous adventures, so why is it now that he decides to be safer at home? You know, it doesn't make much sense. So, yeah, the God Complex, to me, just doesn't make much sense at all. In 6th place, I've put 42, which is a story that I've talked about a little bit already, actually, on this channel, in my video about Chris Chibnall, which I did in February, I think. And when I rewatched it for that video, I did actually think it was better than I previously thought, but it's still not great. And in the video, I think I did say that I thought it was underrated, actually. But ultimately, looking back, I just don't think there's anything that special about this story. You know, I think the only real thing it has to offer is the whole thing that it's set in real time. But then it's not actually set in real time. It's kind of set in real time, kind of not. And yeah, like other stories on this list, I find it quite dull, quite boring, quite unengaging, really. Even though there's this impending doom because the spaceship is going to crash into the sun, it does have good moments, like when the Doctor's taken over by the sun. I find that quite interesting. But yeah, I just don't think the story has very many good points, really. In 5th place, I put the Lazarus Experiment. Now, this is a story that I've not watched in ages, so I've probably not got much to say about it, really. I mean, now, in the worst 5 episodes, we're kind of getting to the ones that I really don't like much. You know, we've had some that I don't mind, some that I just dislike, some that I don't think are very good, but these are the stories that I just will avoid watching because they're so bad, really. What I can remember about this story is that it's quite dull, like the one before, I think. And it kind of has 2 endings, really, because the Lazarus creature is defeated, but then Lazarus himself goes off to that cathedral place, and there's another climax there as well. I mean, I think the concept behind the kind of mutation thing to create this monster, that is a good idea, but I just don't think it's achieved very well, really. I think the monster doesn't look great. It looks a bit ridiculous, like a massive kind of scorpion, and all it really does is chase the Doctor and Martha around the laboratory for no reason, really. I mean, does he have a motive? I can't remember. And then he's defeated by the sound of a bell, I think it is, in the cathedral. But yeah, it's just not a really great story, from what I can remember at least. New Earth. New Earth is a story that I really don't like much at all. I mean, yeah. Is there anything good about it? not really. Well, I suppose the whole thing about the diseased people being the monster and the cat people, that's kind of interesting, I suppose, maybe. But why are the people cats? That always confused me as a kid. I mean, I realise it's probably to do with some kind of mutation or crossing of genes or something in the future to make cat human. But yeah, that confused me. I think the Doctor and Rose are very unlikable in this story, particularly when they're taken over by Cassandra, which is just, it's comedy, really, isn't it? You know, it doesn't serve much purpose to the plot. You know, it's just RTD giving David Tennant and Billie Piper something new to do, I think, really. I mean, I like Cassandra, and I like the fact that she comes back from Series 1, but I just think the whole kind of overall tone of this story it's too comedic, too fun, too funny. I mean, I think like quite a few Series 2 stories, I don't like it because of the Doctor and Rose, like I've said, particularly Rose, who is just absolutely awful in Series 2. But yeah, it's another one that I've not watched in ages, so I can't remember a lot of it. But from what I can remember, it's not very good at all. Let's kill Hitler. Oh dear. I was recently rewatching Series 6 Part 1, although not in order, but I have seen all the episodes. And I do think it's quite a strong run, actually. There's not one episode that's kind of too boring, too dull, too unengaging. And then to come back after A Good Man Goes to War, which is an epic episode, to come back with this, well, just what the hell, really? I mean, at the time, I didn't think that because, well, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know what good Doctor Who was, really. But it's definitely not this. I think, like New Earth, it's the wrong tone. After such a dark run in Series 6 Part 1, this is the wrong tone to come back with. It's too fun, flirtatious, kind of comedic as well. And River Song is just so unlikable. in this story. Oh, and not to mention the thing with Mel's and Melody and River as well. That's just, it's kind of unnecessary because it was never mentioned before about Mel's being a friend of Amy and Rory's, and it's never mentioned again. The only purpose it serves is to get River Song back to the 1930s. That's the only reason she is Mel's, you know. And the test lecture is alright, but pretty interesting, I will admit. But by the time you've got to the end, with River kind of leaning down on the Doctor and kissing him and all the regeneration energy and all that kind of stuff, you're just thinking, oh dear, please can this end right now, you know. And then of course there's that weird line at the end where the Doctor says, haven't you worked that one out yet? Yeah. There are just a lot of things that I really don't like about this story. That it doesn't have many good points at all. Now there are two absolutely awful episodes that I had in mind for this list to go in places number 1 and 2, and I wasn't sure which order to put them in. You know, I wasn't sure which one is worse. And I think I did a poll on Twitter about it, but actually in the end I decided that I disagreed with the results. And I think the only things that in The Forest of the Night, which is an absolutely awful episode, no plots, no good characters, it's just awful. But the only things that this has above the episode which I put in first place is Peter Capaldi, the scenery, the cinematography, you know, all the green woodland. I will admit that looks lovely, and the soundtrack as well, you know, the music. They're the only three things that are good about this story, and unfortunately, it is not enough to save it. You know, even Peter Capaldi's great performance is not enough to save this script, because, like I say, there is no plot. The characters are underdeveloped, that they're all kids, all really annoying kids, you know, they're gifted and talented. It's just a recipe for disaster, really. And one thing that I really don't like about this story is how it tries to portray London that's been taken over by trees, but the only people that are around in this London are these kids, Danny, Clara, the Doctor, Maeve's mum, and some guys that are trying to burn the trees. They're the only characters that are around. You know, you would have thought that there would be people running around screaming, panicking, and that it wouldn't just be the Doctor and Clara and Danny going around with these kids. And another thing I don't like about the plot as well is how 1 minute they're like navigating their way to the TARDIS, these kids, then they're in the TARDIS, then they come out of the TARDIS, and they go back in the TARDIS, and there's that thing where they ring up all the phones in Britain, and then just when you think it's going somewhere, and the Doctor's worked it out, Clara comes out with this weird speech, and yeah, there's just so much wrong with this story, which is a shame, because it's a Capaldi era story, and I really love every other story in the Capaldi era. But I've tried so hard to like this one, and I just can't. But there is actually one episode that I do think is worse than this. You probably saw this coming, it's Fear, of course. What else? The 11th episode of Series 2 of Doctor Who, and it is just awful. It has nothing at all going for it, you know. I think I asked on Twitter if anybody had any good points of this story, and the one answer that I got was the Olympics. But even that, even the setting of the Olympics doesn't offer anything to the story. It doesn't add anything to the story, really. And it's a strange setting, you know, it's strange to set it in 2012. I don't get that, really. It has no importance. The only importance it really has is to send that ship back off into space or something like that. I don't know. Chloe Webber is an annoying child, and the thing how she kidnaps people in drawings is just weird. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to see on CBBC, maybe, or the Sarah Jane Adventures at least, but not Doctor Who. It's quite a childish episode, I think, which is a tone that I don't really like much. And the whole thing where they sing that song about the Kookaburra or something like that is just awful. And the Scribble Monster, the Scribble Monster looks like it's come out of some CBeebies programme. I can't list all the things that are wrong with this story in such a short amount of time, but it just really is the worst episode of Doctor Who for me, and it would take a very, very bad episode, particularly with Capaldi as the Doctor, you know. It would take such an awful episode to push this out of first place, because it's just absolutely awful. So there you have it, my worst 10 episodes of Doctor Who of all time. Please comment your lists below so I can see them, and check out my previous top 10, my top 10 modern episodes of Doctor Who, and my Ranking the Doctors video as well, from this series so far, if you haven't already. I'll be back next Monday for another top 10 video, and it will be my top 10 companions from all of Doctor Who's history. So thanks for watching, I guess, and bye for now.